The CXPod is brought to you by Netigate. Netigate helps you put your customers at the center of your business. Check them out at netigate.net.
Welcome to the CXPod, where we aim to expand people's perception of customer experience management. We know that customer experience goes hand in hand with employee experience, and we believe that a broader and more holistic view might even replace terms like CX and EX with people experience or human experience.
Hello everyone and welcome to the CXPod again. Hello Joanna, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you, Marita?
I'm good, and I'm so excited to have Marc here with us. Hello, Marc.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are.
Yeah, exactly. That's so we're recording this Norwegian time afternoon, but for you that's in the morning. We just stated before the recording went on. Do you care to elaborate?
I'm based out of Toronto, Canada.
Great. What's the weather like today?
Oh, it's beautiful. Nice Celsius-wise, it's about 28, 29 degrees. Fahrenheit.
Wow.
I think that would be around, I want to say around 80. I think that would be about 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Wow, it's like 18
nice.
here. Yeah, so we are in August. I mean, the recording isn't going to be out until a couple of weeks, but still, it's, fall is approaching, summer's over, definitely, and here we are back doing the CXPod, which is exciting. You know, even if holiday is good, CXPod is maybe even just a little better.
Absolutely.
Good pitch, Marita.
Yeah. So, Marc, I mean, we have talked briefly before starting this recording. Like you say, you're from Canada. I'm just always so happy to be able to introduce people from the other side of the world or even just another country, because this podcast, as some of you may know, started off as a Norwegian thing that Joanna and I did basically as a hobby. And it's not that it's become that big. It's still our hobby, I suppose, but we have received feedback that more and more people want to listen. So this is why we changed the language to English. We do know we have listeners now across the Nordics and Europe, and probably even so a little bit in the US and now Canada. So great to have you, and great that we sort of got to meet you through Jill. So here we are, and you have said yes to participate in our question challenge. So thank you for that.
Thank you for the invite. It's great to be here.
Great. So are you ready?
I'm good. Let's do this.
Let's do this. So first of all, it's quite easy. You know, tell us about yourself. Who is Marc?
Well, in a nutshell, I am sort of known as the customer experience expert. I've been referred to as Canada's customer experience superstar by the Oprah Winfrey Network. I've spoken all over the world. In 2018, I was invited to speak in Tehran at the World Management Forum. I've spoken throughout Europe and North America, obviously. And I come at customer experience very differently than most of my colleagues in the field. I have a different perspective on it. I view it less as a sort of a business process and more as a human process. Because, you know, at the end of the day, companies are faceless entities in a sense. I mean, they exist more as a concept. It's really at the very core of it. It's people, whether they be employees or customers. So I come at the whole customer experience perspective very much from that point. And before I was involved in this, I had a marketing company, and that originally I got into business back in the 90s. I was in the automotive industry, and that's where I really started to see the relationship between product quality and customer experience. And I realized very early on that regardless of quality, if the customer experience and the level of service was there, that would give you a competitive edge. And our products were up there. I wouldn't say they were the best quality products, but they were definitely up there. And our pricing was competitive, but we weren't the cheapest game in town. But I made sure that everybody got no questions asked service. Whatever they needed, we would do. If there was ever a problem, we would take care of it. No questions asked. And I think that gave us a really, really strong competitive edge. And after 10 years, we were the largest in our industry in the country. for our product, for our market niche. And I sold the company in 2003, and that's when I got into just doing straight marketing as a marketing agency. And then that kind of evolved into the whole customer experience offering and the speaking. So today, typically I wear two hats. I have a marketing agency and I do speaking and consulting under the customer experience banner. So that's how I spend my days.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, that really, it's lovely to hear, Mark, because I feel like we have a lot in common. One, I'm not going to go into my car tale because I've already said it so many times on this podcast. I have a really interesting history as a customer with a car dealer, but I think it's really interesting with your marketing hat and your customer experience because that's something that relates to me as well. You know, I work in a marketing, originally a marketing bureau, but you realize that this is so much more. It's about brand experience, it's about customer experience, and when you get down to it, it's exactly as you said, it's about the human experience. And you can't build a successful long-term brand if you're not thinking about the entire customer experience or the human experience. So really interesting.
Very true. And you know, it's interesting,
So
you
with
having been
your
in marketing. Sorry?
No, carry on, Mark.
Oh, I was going to say, Joanna, having been in marketing, it's interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I've always believed that in some form, marketing can be the worst thing when it comes to customer experience. I've seen this so many times with my clients who would put together or ask us to put together these incredible campaigns showing their the best quality or the best price or the best service. And when done really well, like a really, really good marketing campaign, my belief is that can often set unrealistic expectations for the customer. And then the business, they can't even keep up with their own marketing. You know, they talk about how amazing they are, and they just do such an amazing job with their marketing that they've set the bar so high in terms of expectations that they can't even meet them. And then you end up, and it's not that it's a bad experience. I mean, they still would provide, great service. The problem is the customer's expectations aren't being met, and those expectations were influenced by the marketing.
Yeah.
I can see Joanna thriving. I mean, it's obvious because, and we've touched upon this so many times in the podcast as well, like, don't we just hate it when marketing promise you something that the rest of the organization can't keep up with? Because it's basically just, it's demining for everyone who's having respect for the customers, because you know that this isn't going to fly, and at some point it's just going to crash down and create more problems than you had from before because of that expectation gap. So that was why I was laughing. So it wasn't, it was pure excitement over the and I love that you're asking Joanna this because
and I could see what Maretta was thinking.
And you know what's interesting? It's not just the customers, I think, that get hurt by great marketing. It's often the employees too, especially the frontline employees, who are often usually the most knowledgeable when it comes to understanding the relationship that customers have with the company. But they're often viewed as the lowest level in terms of being a resource, an internal resource. So you get these marketing departments that work with management, and they kind of go off and do their own thing based on whatever management wants. And then the frontline employees who have no say in this at all of a sudden are facing customers who they know aren't going to receive the level of service promised through the marketing or the product quality or whatever it is. And there's nothing they can do. And it creates stress on the front end because customers aren't getting what they believe they should get. And employees know that they're not able to deliver what the customers think they should get.
Yeah, it's so spot on. I don't know if you have recently been writing on LinkedIn, or Maretta and me have also been talking a lot about this term that we've called CX washing. And it really encompasses exactly what we're just talking about. The fact that you set high demands, but then you can't deliver against what it is you're promoting yourself as being. And absolutely, that has impacts on the employees as well as it does the customers. So yeah, really great that you've just touched on my heart. What do you call it? The soul that I'm trying to express at the moment. Yeah. But Mark,
Very good.
while we're going down into this road, because you have a quite diverse and wide experience and background, traveled around the world. What would you say is your level of not level, but what is your special field of expertise, would you say, in the world of customer experience?
Wow, that's wow, I've never been asked that ever. It's interesting when I think about it now. I wouldn't say there's a specific area because it really is all encompassing. It's like I think it would be almost like going to like a massage therapist and saying, well, what's your area of specialty? It's from the head to the toes. It's all encompassing. To focus on one specific area of customer experience, I think would ignore the importance of others. So I know. Jill Raff, one of the guests you had, an amazing woman. She focuses very much on employee experience. So that's one thing. But for me personally, it's really customer experience. So I guess from an area of specialty or an area I focus on, it really is top down because it starts with company culture. It starts with an understanding of your level of service. And I've often said to companies that it's okay to not be the best. It's okay to not have the highest quality. It's okay to not have the cheapest prices. These are okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And in North America, we have dollar stores. And I'm sure in Norway and other parts of the world, in England, they have pound stores. And, I'm sure in Norway, they have other stores like that. And we know when we go into stores like that, you're not going to get the best quality, but you're going to pay very little for the product. And we know that. And it's okay to be like that. And as long as you present it honestly and authentically, customers will understand what they're going to get and they'll be okay with it. And that's fine. And that's a big part to me of customer experience, is really being authentic with who you are and saying, look, this is how we operate. And that's it. And we do a really good job at operating that way. We do a really good job of providing products that are, in the case of dollar stores, not the greatest quality, but we're convenient, we're everywhere, and the prices are really low. And if that's in line with the values of the customer, then fantastic. If you want to be a premium store where your prices are very high and your quality is very high and your service is top notch, again, present yourself as such. I think where the disconnect is when companies don't communicate that effectively. They either undersell themselves or they oversell themselves with the CX washing, as you had mentioned. And so again, back to your question, I don't think there's a specific area. It really starts company culture and understanding of what you do and understanding of what your customers expect or the customers that you want to attract, and then communicating that effectively, which is where I guess marketing comes in. But it really is a holistic thing from top down, I would say. So that's the short answer.
So I keep adding questions every now and then too, because we talk about stuff and then I start thinking, and then so I was just wondering from a Canadian perspective, I suppose as well, because everything that you say, obviously we work within CX as well. So to us, I'm not going to say it's common sense, but we recognize what you're saying and it makes sense to us in so many ways. But is your experience that the business leaders that you talk to when you're hired as a consultant, are they often surprised when you sort of highlight this to them, or do they understand it, but it's just operationalization of it that's hard? Because sometimes I'm thinking like, how can they not get this? And then sometimes I wonder, maybe they do get it, but they just don't know how to approach it. So which one is your sort of, or what is your take on that?
Well, I can tell you that those that reach out to me to want to work with me with regards to consulting or get some feedback from me as to how they're doing things, they tend to be the companies that are doing a pretty good job already, but know that they could do better. The companies that don't use me are convinced that they're doing an amazing job already.
Are the ones that should, right?
The ones that probably should, yeah. So the ones that think they're doing an amazing job, and in some cases they might be, but in most cases they're not. They're like, we don't care. We don't need you. We're doing just fine. And I don't know if this is a Canadian thing or not, but I'm going to take a big shot at Canadian businesses here, which I find to be very, very complacent overall. And when I say that, I'm comparing them generally to American businesses. So I find American companies are very, very aggressive with regards to always wanting to be better. How can we enter new markets? How can we get more market share? How can we create more revenue? How can we create more loyal customers? Whereas Canadian businesses tend to be more, complicit, more, their attitude is we're doing fine.
Yeah.
We're okay. We're growing at a reasonable rate, and the customers are coming back and sales are increasing enough, and we're okay, and then I say, well, you know what? If you apply these few things, which would likely cost you almost nothing, because a lot of times customer experience is process based. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to redo your stores or hire more staff. In many cases, it's a company culture thing or just change in process or policies. And they'll say, no, we're good. Everything's fine. So it's interesting, though, because people I talk to across North America, both in Canada and the US, and I don't know, I'd be interested in knowing if you find this in Europe and in Scandinavian countries as well. They say that customer service is at an all-time low. Like people will openly say customer experience sucks. Like it's terrible, which is absolutely fantastic for people like us, because I say in so many industries where I speak to, I say, you know what? I got good news for you guys. The bar is really low. Your industry is doing a terrible job. Your competitors are doing a terrible job. And that presents an incredible opportunity for you, because all you need to do is make some small tweaks to how you deliver products and services or how you service your customers. And you will leapfrog everybody because they're doing such a lousy job.
Yeah.
And there's some companies that recognize that and see it as an opportunity. And there's, again, other ones that are passive and complicit. So what can you do?
Yeah.
Cool. Very good. And thank you for that. So we're going to try to move on a little bit. And this is also because you just mentioned, and you said customer service, you said customer experience. And one of the questions we ask every time, because it's so interesting to see, is how would you define CX or customer experience, or even customer experience management if you want? But like, what is the definition? Because in our experience, there's a lot of different sort of interpretations of CX out there. So let's get yours.
There is. Okay. So first off, you're right. A lot of people use the term customer experience and customer service interchangeably. I do not. So based on my years of research, I've come up with a formula, and I'll try to share it very quickly. I normally share this in my talks, but I'm going to share it very, very quickly. My view has been that customer experience, first of all, is basically an umbrella concept that covers any type of interaction that a person or a customer, not even, I mean, you're only a customer once you buy something. So it covers any interaction a person has with a company. So this can be through a website, it can be on the phone, it can be in person, it can be through email, but there has to be that interaction. So I would not consider marketing to be part of the customer experience formula. To me, marketing is an influencer and nothing more, because when you see an ad on television or on the internet or in print, that's simply influencing your perception and idea of what the company offers, but there's no interaction. Within customer experience, I break it down into three pillars, I call them. There's customer care, customer support, and customer service. Customer care is basically any normal interaction you have with a company, your day-to-day. So when you call a company, you reach out to them through whatever channel you choose, how the normal interaction goes. There's nothing weird going on. You're not asking them to do anything special. So when you call a company and the receptionist picks up the phone, or even the automated system, how's it working? Is it easy to navigate? Is it easy to reach the right person? Are they able to help you? Just day to day. So that's customer care. Customer service, the next one is customer support. Customer support is when you need something. So there's not a problem. You just need something. So a good example would be technical support. You call a company and you might say, oh, my printer isn't talking to my computer. I can't print anything. So there's not a problem, but you need some help. So that would be customer support. And that can take many forms, everything from, again, technical support. It could be education sessions. It could be literature that the company would send to you, all kinds of stuff. But again, it doesn't come down to being a problem. It comes down to the customer just needing help. And then the last one is customer service. And customer service is when there is a problem. So the customer is not happy. They got something they didn't want, something isn't working right, whatever it might be. It might not even be legitimate. Who knows, right? I mean, the customer's not always right. But whatever the case, the customer is unhappy and they're coming back to the company, and they could be making demands, they could be just complaining, they could be looking for help. How the company handles that is customer service. And it could be everything from de-escalating to refunds to warranty issues to whatever it might be. So you have customer care, customer support, and customer service. Those are the three pillars, as I've described them, under customer experience. And each of them require unique skills. So a person who can provide customer care, for example, may not be very good at providing customer support or customer service. They're unique skills, they're unique resources within each company. They follow different rules and policies, and that is basically customer experience. So when I speak to companies and organizations, we break it down and then we look at who in that company is best suited to do specific tasks, because again, they are different. So you get the guy in a company who's super smart, and he knows that product in and out. And if you had a problem with the product, he's the guy to talk to. But would you want that guy dealing with an angry customer? Probably not. He might not be very good at dealing with hostility. He might not be very good at, emotionally being able to downgrade a situation and calm people down. It might not be a skill set, but boy, does he know the product. So again, it comes down to allocating resources based on that. So that's my definition.
And that's a great segue to the next question, because it's all about allocating resources. We've got this umbrella that's, what should we say, sort of housing the customer care, the customer support, customer service. So who do you think should own the responsibility for customer experience, or for all of these, what should I say, under the umbrella? Who owns the umbrella?
Oh, well, definitely management, no question. It starts at the top. It always starts at the top, whether it regards, what it really comes down, I guess, two things. One is company culture, first and foremost. Are you a customer-oriented company? And then second of all, is the implementation of policies and procedures to support that. And that's where you start to get the division of certain groups and certain individuals with unique skills to form those silos between customer care, customer support, and customer service. But again, it starts with the top. And this can be a challenge for small businesses because, so for example, if you're a small business and you only have 2 or 3 employees or 4 employees, you often will get that crossover where the person who provides customer care, who's answering the phone, is the same person who's going to have to deal with an angry customer. So they will have to wear 2 hats. They will have to establish or build on those unique skills needed, and that may require training. So it does tend to be more challenging for smaller businesses to operate efficiently under that customer experience umbrella, but it can be done. It's not that difficult.
Yeah. And do you see that in the larger companies, for example, in Canada, is it typical that you have like a customer experience manager who is responsible for, what should I say, governing or, a governance model, so to say, over this umbrella? I really like your umbrella.
Yes. Again, it's really different from one company to the next. Smaller companies obviously do not have a customer experience manager because they just don't have the resources. Bigger companies, it's interesting if you go on LinkedIn and you look at some bigger companies and you see individuals there who would refer to themselves as a customer experience manager. What they really are, when you dig a little deeper, is they're really nothing more than customer service people. So if you, and that even drifts a little bit into sales. So, a good example is banks. You'll get a lot of people at a bank who will call themselves a customer experience manager, when really all they are is customer service /sales. So if you want to get a loan, or you want to extend your line of credit, or maybe apply for a credit card, you would call them and they would say, well, I'm a customer experience person because I deliver great service and help the customer. But it's really not a position of any authority.
No, unless you give the authority to them, which is very rare, I find it. So, but also it's it's fine because we need all the layers and all the different types of employees, but it's also become a jungle out there, and we saw it, looking at work ads, just even in Norway, how many different titles the same role could have, or how many different roles you could apply to the same title, and it's just a big mess of how, because people don't seem to. I'm not going to say that no one understands it, but the whole umbrella anecdote. I like that because it really exemplifies at least how we feel about customer experience and what it is. And I think for people listening to this podcast should know that, when we talk about customer experience, we're not just talking about customer service, or not just talking about sales, or not just talking about, the people who come out and fix stuff for you, but we're talking about the whole concept of treating customers in a specific way that is customer oriented. So, yeah. And this sort of brings us to the next question as well, because in today's business-centric world, in today's customer-centric business world, a lot of things are going on, and we want to ask all of our guests really, what is it that's capturing your attention these days when it comes to being customer-centric, or in the dialogue around CX? What is it that's sort of going on? Is there anything in particular that stands out to you these days, or nowadays?
Well, actually, what really stood out to me was when you referred it to customer-centric business world. I think it's a great term, but I have to tell you, I think many businesses don't share your view on that, regretfully. I think the term customer-centric is one that's thrown around a lot, and it's very easy for a business to say we're customer-centric. In fact, I would argue that every business would tell you they're customer-centric. There's not a single business in the world that would say we're not customer-centric. But the reality is, I think many of them are not, either because they don't care, much like the airlines, or they think they care, but they're not demonstrating it. So I just wanted to throw that in. With regards to what's really leaping out at me as a game changer these days would be AI, because it has the ability to play such an active role in how customers interact with a business. And it's progressing so quickly that I think in the next year or so, there's going to come a point where you'll be speaking to somebody and you may not even know whether it's a person or a bot. You're almost getting that now when you do chats, when you're in a chat box, and I think the days of asking a question, it still happens sometimes. I'm sure we've all been there where you get the chat bot come up and you ask a question and it can't seem to understand anything you're asking. I think that is old technology by what's available today. I think some of the newer AI chatbots are just incredible with what you're able to ask. The downside of that is I think a lot of companies may be leaning on that and saying, wow, you know what, we'll just implement AI, and that means we can fire our entire customer service department, or we can cut down the number of staff we have in our call center by half and let AI do all the work. And you can replace 50 employees with a server that sits in the corner. And I would say that is not the right approach. That it may be down the road, maybe in 10 years, 5 years, I don't know. But as of right now, it's not the right approach. AI is not there yet. And there's a lot of people who still want to speak to another individual. And I think as human beings, we still have the ability to read the situation and really understand who we're talking to on many different levels that AI cannot grasp. So things like, tonality, slang, just sensing, is the person on the other end distressed? Are they nervous? Are they, concerned? Is their complaint legitimate? Is there, things like that. And I've always believed that people should not be treated the same, but they should be treated equally, if that makes sense.
Good point. Yeah.
I don't think AI is smart enough to do that yet.
Exactly. And I was just about what I was going to say. We can talk about IQ and we can talk about EQ, right? So you can teach the bot to be intelligent in the book's smart way, because he or she can read whatever gender AI has. But you can feed it with knowledge and facts or lies for that matter. But they can sort of grasp all this information, which makes them capable of doing so much. But you can never teach them how to be properly emotional intelligent, because every single person is different. So no matter how much data you feed it with, you cannot be sure that it's gonna. So some criteria it might be able to meet depending on, but at the end of the day, and also I think, and we've talked a lot about this, and the whole vulnerability aspect of being a customer who needs help, because AI is most oftenly talked about in a customer service setting, right? So when you call customer service or you chat with them or you approach them because you need something, you're in a vulnerable position because something hasn't gone the way you expected it to. And that's just a very uncomfortable feeling. So no matter how much knowledge you feed the bot to be able to answer the questions that this person may have, the sense of vulnerability that they feel, how can you teach a computer or, an artificial intelligence to deal with that? So I totally agree with you. And I think every single time this topic comes up in the podcast, we agree that we still need a human sort of approach and we need that humanity. And I just love that we end up with that same conclusion every single time, because I have yet to meet a person who says, no, AI can just take over everything. That's going to be fine. And that makes me really happy and relieved, I suppose.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. I do think that AI can do a lot. And I think in many situations, again, if we look back to the silos, you've got customer support and customer service. And those two pillars are usually controlled by the customer. When a customer reaches out to a business, it's either because they need help or there's a problem. And AI, I think, can do a lot. So for example, if your item arrived broken, or you don't know where it is, or you're looking for a specific piece of information, there's no reason why AI can't take care of that and do it extremely well and extremely efficiently. And and probably even much faster than a human being. AI would have the ability to recognize your voice, it would recognize your language, and within seconds it could take care of it. I think where the real problem is when you get emotions that come into play, and like you said, in many cases the customer's distraught, and I think that's where AI again needs to be smart enough to say, you know what, this is outside of my area of specialty, I'm going to transfer you to a human.
Yeah.
And again, that comes down to company culture and process. So when these AI systems are installed, the company gets to decide how active it's going to be and at what point it's going to start transferring people to humans. And that, I think, is the real definition of how well AI will work. When a company isn't afraid to set it, to go right to a human if there's a problem.
And I just read an example. This was from the US and it was from the recruiting industry, but I think there was a group of people who actually went to court against the company because they discovered that the recruitment AI, the AI helping them recruit people, it was basically just constantly refusing women over 55 and men over 60. Their applications weren't even sort of read or processed. And then this group of people, a lot of them sort of reacted to this, or I don't know exactly how they found out, but they did go to court and they actually won the lawsuit, and the company had to change the policy. And then, that's not AI's fault. That's a human error that's been made. That's a human decision that's been made. So you can't really. So I think we also need to be careful not to blame AI for all the fuck ups, if we're allowed to say that because it's our podcast, But you cannot blame AI for the fuck ups that people do when implementing the AI. So I think that's also very important in today's, either it's customer centric or not customer centric business world, but in today's business world, we need to keep that in mind, that we do have a responsibility on how to use these tools and this technology that's being made available to us.
Yeah. And as we're talking about, we're really into challenges actually, and that is the question that we've got here. What do you think are, in your opinion, what do you think are the most significant challenges that companies face for serving their customers well?
Wow. Well, I think a big problem these days, probably more than ever, is I think customers have a strong sense of entitlement, probably stronger at any point ever in the history of commerce. That's what I find. I'm not sure if it's that way in your part of the world, but I think definitely over here in North America, the customers very proudly wear the badge that says the customer is always right. They believe that, and I think part of that is fed through social media, and it's just a mindset that customers have that I'm right, I'm the customer, I should get whatever I want, And
Mm.
as we all know, the customer is not always right.
No, it's a
They're
challenge.
going to be wrong. Yeah, they're going to make
Yeah.
unrealistic requests. So I think that's a big challenge right there. And then combined with that is social media as a whole. So you end up with these businesses who maybe they drop the ball, maybe something didn't work out quite right, maybe a customer's disappointed legitimately or not. And instead of a customer just going and asking for the manager and saying, look, this is the problem I had, can you help me out? They'll jump on social media and they'll publicly
Yeah.
bag on this company and say, oh, the service was horrible and this and that. And, oh, look at my lunch. I ordered this lunch and they only gave me this and, this cold and not prepared properly.
Yeah.
But at no point did they go back to the restaurant and say, could you fix this? And 9 times out of 10, the restaurant would say, sorry, our mistake. Here, take a new one. Here you are. Don't worry.
Yeah. And then there's also the whole situation when the customer is wrong and you explain to them why they're wrong and they accept it. But you still see as a provider of whatever it is you provide that this actually isn't good because, sometimes and I have an example now from my industry where, I'm in real estate development. So we basically buy lots, we develop them, we have our entrepreneur build the homes, the apartments, and then we sell them. And then every now and then things, aren't right. And we have the law that we need to sort of comply with. And there are these thresholds of, this can deviate this much and that can deviate this much. And then you see that maybe we're within the deviation frame. So we can actually say, we're not going to fix it because we're actually within. But you still see that it's such a big, it's a big enough problem for the customer that it doesn't feel right to say that to them. And then how do you sort of go about that? Because, you don't want to spend a shitload of money to fix the problem because it may be really expensive stuff. But on the other hand, you don't want to be leaving your customers disappointed, knowing that they're going to be talking badly about you, knowing that they're going to be so sort of frustrated. And this is their home we're talking about. So it's not just like a new phone or a headset or whatever. And I think that's a really tricky one because how can you make that right without losing all that money, but at the same time, because you're within that sort of limit where you could say, not my problem. So we shouldn't let AI solve those, at least.
Well, yeah, AI is definitely not anywhere near that. So it's interesting that you like that story you mentioned about being in the real estate industry, and similar stories occur in all kinds of industries. So a couple of things I would say. First off, you never want never tell the customer they're wrong. If anything, I openly encourage people to say, to actually agree with the customer's feeling. So you're not saying to the customer, I agree with you that we screwed up. No, what I would say is I agree with you in that you feel that way. And I would say something like, oh, you're upset. I totally get that. If I was where you are, I'd be upset too. I totally get that you're upset. And then if you can get them to understand that what they're feeling is validated and it's okay, even though it might not be correct, but it's okay for them to feel that way. Instantly you go from being an adversary to an ally. And then the second part of that is actually seeing what you can do. Now, it's interesting what you said that, and again, if I was a consultant and this was a different kind of call, I would ask you things like, okay, did they get what they believed they were going to get? Or did they think something else and you just did the bare minimum, but they believed they were getting something else? And even though you worked within the confines of the contract or of the law, they still believed that they were going to get more. My follow-up to that would be, why did they think that? So why was there a disconnect between what you provided and what they thought they were going to get? This often comes down to communication. And so many businesses, especially when there's a large project involved, like real estate or custom building of some type, there tends to be a lack of communication. So, a lot of designers, and I've done much work in the housing and building industry, and a lot of companies will provide information to the customer, but they'll provide it in a way that customers don't understand because they'll use their own technical jargon or they'll use architectural drawings. Most people can't read architectural drawings, right? So they'll just here's the drawings, and the customer will look at it and go, okay, looks good to me. And then the house is built, and they're like, wait a minute, the bathroom is supposed to be on the other side. And the
Yeah.
builder will say, well, we showed
Yeah.
you the drawings. And of course,
Yeah.
look at the drawings, and the customer doesn't understand. So two things I say. Number
Yeah.
one, there has to be constant communication. And I mean constant, like all the time for every little thing. But also you have to communicate in a way that's good for the customer. In so many industries, technology, automotive, so many industries will talk in a way, and again, a great example is doctors and lawyers. Anyone who's ever talked to a doctor or a lawyer, they'll often say, can you tell me that in English? I don't understand anything you're saying, because they're using technical terms that for them are normal.
Yeah.
But for their customers or clients, they don't understand. So it's important to speak the way your customers listen. You got to speak your customer's language, not your industry language. So right there, I would say.
Think, yeah. No, and it's funny because this is the exact same approach that you took here. That's the approach that I took, and we ended up with, and this is something that we can't really offer a quick solution, but what we can do is probably offer a substitute of some kind and say, look, we're sorry, we still understand the problem. Here is what we can do. And then hope that that's going to be a little patch on the sort of, or a Band-Aid on the cut. So, but it's just, again, this is stuff that you cannot really fix it reactively anymore. You should have fixed it proactively. Maybe a year back. And that's why I think maybe it has to be like this for now, but the next time we need to at least make sure that we learn from it, and then we're back to company culture. So So
do you think, if you don't mind me asking, do you think that was due to a lack of communication?
No, I see that this is something that I don't think anyone could have foreseen this problem, because everything has been done correctly due to, plans and drawings and installations, and everything has been done correctly. It's just about where this building is situated when it comes to sunlight. And so I probably couldn't, and I shouldn't go too deep into it, but let's say, as a silly example, let's say you buy an apartment, and then when you finally take it over, you see that the windows are way smaller than what you expected. But then you know that the drawings say they would be, and it's even specified, that this is, but somehow the sunlight, it's not even a good enough example. I can't really find a suitable one for this specific problem, because in any different case, we would have solved it quite easily. But this one is so tricky because nobody could have foreseen that this would happen.
Right.
I think, well, probably somebody could have. Maybe AI could have, if we had fed everything into an AI engine back then. But it's just been a big surprise for everyone. So fortunately, yet the customers understand that we are too a little, okay, we actually didn't see this coming. And we're trying to find solutions, and we realize that we're going to have to do something, but we're just on the border of what's okay or not. So technically we could go, and this is my job, right, to say we're not going to go. We're going to go here and say, look, we're not going to just pull back and say, sorry, we're within. So that again is about the culture.
Right. So and there's nothing wrong, by the way, with openly telling a customer, look, we kind of dropped the ball on this, but we've passed the point of no return. We know you're not happy, and you come flat out and ask, what can we do to make you happy? Knowing the situation, knowing that we obviously cannot rebuild, we can't take, we can't go back in time and change things. What can we do? And not just in your situation, but in many, many situations, coming right out and just saying, here's the situation, what can we do? You'd be amazed.
Or even provide a solution, like even provide a pre-thought, like let's have an internal workshop here to figure out what can we offer them and see, could this maybe help solve the problem, so that they feel that we are being proactive in some sense.
Right. But even giving that onus to the customer, you'd be amazed how often the customers will ask for something very, very reasonable. Like it's amazing. Like in many cases, the fact that you've even empowered the customer to say, look, this is what would make me, and you tell them, you say, look, we feel really bad. We want to make you happy. What can we do? In many cases, the customer will be more than reasonable because you actually showed that you cared. And at that point, their emotional framework changes, And all of a sudden they go from being like, well, I want everything I can. I want to be compensated. I want to be taken care of. You ruined my life and
Exactly.
blah, blah, blah. All of a
No, but
sudden they're
that's
like,
what's going to
wow.
happen if you start by doing this,
Yeah.
and then after a
Yeah.
while you realize that you shouldn't have. That's what you're going to end up with, and then you've spent so much time and effort and so much, paying people to have these discussions instead of just maybe doing it, putting a little bit more effort into it to begin with, so that you don't end up in that situation.
Yeah,
So,
showing some empathy to the customer and saying, look, I understand you're upset. If I was where you are, I'd be upset too. I
Yeah.
wish we could make it 100% right, but regretfully at this point in time, we can't. But we want you to be happy. So knowing what we know, what can we do to make you happy? And
exactly.
in many situations, the customer will ask for something so reasonable that inside you're laughing. You're like, that's all you want. You want a 5% discount. Okay. Or you want, this free little extra something. Sure. And you'd be prepared to give much more.
Yeah.
But
and then you end up with a good customer satisfaction score.
Yeah.
Even if, because dealing with a mistake in a good way will help customers become more happy with you. And that takes us to the next question, because we have to move on, even though this is so exciting. But we wanted to hear what's your take on the voice of the customer programs, or even, voice of the customer management, potato. But, how do you feel about using voice of the customer into the organization, and probably a little bit how do you think it should be done?
So when we say voice of the customer, you mean like externally?
Basically, yeah. I mean, I think this is a term that's very commonly known in Europe, but maybe not. I don't know if so. It's basically the surveys, the customer satisfaction surveys, the NPS surveys, and using that insight and the data to hopefully operationalize improvements.
Yeah.
Not to answer the question, but do they have a value anymore, or how do we feel about those?
Right. Well, yeah. So we do have them here, and a lot of companies refer to them, and it is very tough. I mean, I'm sure all of us at some point have been on a call with a company, and then a few minutes later we get an email asking us to rate the call and how satisfied we are and everything else. Personally, my belief is that people will only answer if the service was really, really bad, or if the service was really, really good, like amazing. Anything in the middle, I think a lot of people will just delete it. They'll be like, it was fine. I don't need to share that. Or it was terrible, and I want them to know they're only getting 1 star out of 10. When people answer these things, it's usually right after the experience. So things haven't settled. So if you get off that phone call and you totally felt that the company didn't care, you got no help, and then immediately you get an email saying, hey, can you rate this call? You're angry. You're going to give them 1 star. But the reality is, if you were to wait a day or two and realize, you know what, maybe I was being unreasonable in what I was asking, or maybe the company did the best they could under the circumstances, I think I'll give them, maybe 6 stars out of 10 instead of 1 or something. I think they're important, but I think companies need to understand that, you have to take it from where it's coming from, so to speak. And customers are just regular people. And in many cases, they're going to be emotionally driven. They're going to have biases. They're going to have expectations. And I would question any company that would decide to reshape their entire customer service program based solely on surveys.
Yeah.
Really, I would, if it were up to me and I owned a company and I'd want to make sure that my customer service is good, forget the customers. I would talk to the frontline workers. I would talk to those that talk to the customers and find out, are customers happy or sad when they approach you? Are customers happy or sad when they're leaving you? Do they get angry? What's a common complaint? How are things handled now? How much authority do you have as an individual to make the decisions needed? A lot of frontline workers are operating with their hands tied because there's so many rules that they're afraid if they give a discount or give a free product, they'll get fired or disciplined for it.
Yeah.
To me, that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important point, that actually talking to the frontline employees. And another point with collecting these surveys is actually understanding, of course, why you were doing it and what it is you want to find out. Because if there are specific things that are about the customer care program or the customer service program, would it be a better alternative to have quality conversations with your customer group to actually really get in depth with the information you're trying to find out rather than more random surveys?
Yeah, and I also think you have to be really specific with yourself about what is it that you're trying to understand here. What is the hypothesis you want to test? Because just asking random questions about a service or a product or even a business, and then see what you get, and then try to sort of manage yourself and make changes out of that. Like you say, it's very I think it could be dangerous because you could end up shifting the direction of a company without actually knowing if that's what your customers would want. Because again, this is very subjective. It's very emotional based. So you need to be really, really, I mean, I think way too many organizations take too easy on the voice of the customer programs, and especially the surveys, because they don't really think through what is it that we're trying to find out here.
Yeah.
Because if you just want to understand if the customers are happy or not in general, you could talk to customer service. They will know. And they will also know what they're happy and unhappy about. But if you want to test, like, would you have rather had this product instead of that? Or would you have, then you can start. It's almost like the user testing, right? When you start talking about design. So I think, I like them. And I worked within voice of the customer, providers. And I think they can create and add a lot of value, but you have to be specific about what is it that you're trying to figure out when using them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I wonder too, the more questions you ask, like, again, I don't know how it is, Marita, where in your industry with regards to consumer response, but from what I've read, if you're going to ask that one question, how many stars out of 10 would you give us? It says very little. Someone gives 3 stars out of 10. We don't know why.
Yeah.
What does that say? It's so vague. But then you ask 10 or 12 or 15 questions, and the customer gives up after the third question. They're just tired. Like, how many questions are you asking me here?
Yeah.
So they leave, and you don't get any information.
What's the relevance? Yeah.
What do you find? Are people sharing when there's a lot to ask?
Well, they are, but I don't trust the data because one, and we've talked a lot about this as well, people will say one thing and they'll do the opposite because that's what emotions does to us. And I use the example, and I've used it so many times before, but I think it's a good example that, we have three sort of total telecom operators in Norway, where the most expensive one also has the biggest market share. So if price was the driver of mobile subscriptions in Norway, then why do this company still have customers? But whenever you ask mobile customers, what is the biggest driver? What's affecting their choice when they choose a provider or an operator? They will say price. So it doesn't add up. They will say that price is the biggest
driver.
Yeah. But then again, they'll go ahead and become a customer of that company that has the most expensive prices. So it's, you have to understand what lies behind that too, and you have to understand which questions can you ask and which not. So I believe in a good combination of qualitative and quantitative sort of insight, but also you need to remember that data is just data until you actually make it become insight. So you have to have contextual data. You have to see this from, the perspective of what you're trying to understand, and you have to explain this to the customers. And that's not easy in a normal quantitative survey. So you would have to go qualitative, I think. Then again, you could sort of stress test things with getting the masses to reply quickly to, and you can do the max diff tests. And, there's a lot of stuff you can do with quantitative surveys, but I think it should never be allowed to have them operating alone, because you need that sort of, again, human touch, right? And the empathy and the understanding and the whole thing.
Understanding the data. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can train your customers. You can inform them that, this is what we're going to ask. This is what we're going to use it for. This is what we want you to think about when, because then they might even be more engaged in answering and providing you those their opinion.
It's funny when you said price. Everybody says price.
Yeah.
For anything.
Yeah.
Because price is the only thing that isn't abstract. That's what's really interesting, right? Service, quality, these are very abstract terms.
Yeah.
But price is not abstract. We know that $2 is twice as much as $1. So it's very easy. I'd rather buy something for $1 than $2.
Yeah.
Right? It's a no-brainer. It's easy to say.
Yeah.
But nobody will ever say, well, you know what, I'd love my customer experience to be 20% better than the customer experience I'm receiving now.
Yeah.
Nobody can say that.
No. Now we are getting towards the end, and I want to ask one final question. And Mark, in your experience, can you recall or share with us a story where focusing on customer experience has proven to be a game changer for the business?
Okay. So I had a client, or I have a client still, who is a high-end steakhouse in the Toronto area, and very high-end, very, very busy up until 2020 when the pandemic hit. And here in Canada, as I'm sure most of the world, a lot of the restaurants were forced to shut down. So he was able to do takeout, but when you're a high-end steakhouse and part of the experience is not just the food, but actually being there, it impacts everything. And needless to say, his sales fell probably by about 70%, if not more, over the course of the pandemic, which was almost 2 years here. So when he was able to open back up, sales were still very flat, and they had increased somewhat, but not to what they were pre-pandemic. So he came to me and said, well, what can we do? What can we do to get people back in, to raise awareness that we're still here and increase sales, which is the ultimate goal. So his customer experience was already perfect. I mean, it was exceptional service. The food was amazing. I mean, we looked top down and there was actually no weakness. There was no weak spot in the entire customer experience journey. So we said, okay, well, what can we do outside of the customer experience journey as it currently exists? And we discovered that Tuesday nights were the quietest night of the week. So we said, okay, let's do something really interesting here. Let's offer something different on Tuesday. And basically what we came up with were events. We started off with once a month, and then it became twice a month. And he would bring in a sommelier or a chef or a pastry chef, and certain people were invited. So what he did, which he was able to do very quickly, is on his website, and at the time that people would receive their bill at the end of the meal, he let people know about this club. It was like a special exclusive club, and you join the club simply by giving your email address. And he would let people know about these special nights. So they would come, and there'd be a fee, but it would be somewhat of a nominal fee. And they would come in and they would learn about things like, for example, different cuts of beef. And there'd be a chef there, and he would show them all the different cuts of beef, how to cook them, different sauces. And then they would all get a little bit of a tasting menu where they could try the different cuts of beef and see the difference. So people left, not only learn, it turned into an experience in itself, like an educational experience. And another one, they would learn about pastry. And another one, they would learn about wine and all kinds of different things. One time they were brought into the kitchen, and they were actually shown what goes on in a kitchen at a restaurant. And this became huge, and people were sharing this on social media. People were like trying to figure out, how do I get on the list? And you couldn't get on the list directly through the website. You could only get on the list if you came into the restaurant, because that's where they gave you access. There was a QR code on the bill, and that's how we did it. You couldn't join the list to be invited to these events unless you actually went into the restaurant.
Yeah.
And it started off very slow. I think the first one they did, they had like 5 people show up, and he's like, oh, this isn't working. I said, just stick with it. Just stick with it. And within probably about 4 or 5 weeks, he had to cap it because it was so full. We could only have something like 20 or 25 people at a time come in. And we were getting 60, 70 people wanting to come, and he had to cap it. And sales went like straight up because everyone was now talking about the restaurant, and it was incredible. It just took off to the point now actually that he stopped the Tuesday night things, because Tuesday, even though it's still the slowest night, sales had gone up to the point he didn't need to do it anymore. It was actually costing him money because people wanted to come to the restaurant just to eat.
Yeah.
that he couldn't support these extra events. So it actually worked too well, in a matter of speaking. But
But it's a good example of how, a good customer experience is really, really important, but it cannot work alone. You also have to have the correct offering, and you also have, so I like that example, and it's a little different from what we've heard as well. So
Yeah,
but
good
because
example.
a lot of businesses are stuck feeling that the experience has to fit within the framework of their current offerings.
yeah,
Right. So how can we deliver like the same product but do it differently, or the same service but do it differently? And those are great things to try to do. But it's sometimes okay to look a little bit outside what you're doing and
Absolutely.
see if you can offer
yeah,
something a little different.
Yeah. It's about thinking, about your customers' jobs to be done, looking to see whether there are other in their core jobs to be done. Is there something that's outside of our scope today? And I think we can see great examples of some companies that have exemplified. No, what's the word? It's getting late on the Thursday Norwegian time. I'm getting my words mixed up. Sorry, but yeah, I think that is a really, really good, solid example, Mark. So thank you for that.
yeah. And it does bring us to the end of the show, unfortunately. We are going to have to wrap up, but it's been such a pleasure to have you here. And I mean, now we have our very own Canadian CX expert on
Yeah.
the guest list, which is so amazing. And it's been such a great conversation, little nuggets of wisdom all around, from the first question to the last. So thank you so much, Mark. And also, just for people who may want to follow you or pay attention to what it is that you're doing, is LinkedIn the best way to sort of connect, or do you have a website, or how can people reach you if they want to see or hear more from
They
you?
can find me online at marcgordon.ca. That's Mark with a C, marcgordon.ca, or they can just look me up on LinkedIn, whatever works for them. And I'd love to connect with all your listeners and viewers. That would be great. And thank you for the opportunity to be on your podcast. You guys are amazing. And I've listened to some of your other episodes, and I got to tell you, I think it's must listening. It should be required listening for every business.
That's nice.
Thank you.
you. And yeah, we're going to make sure to drop a link to your both LinkedIn profile and Marc Gordon at .ca
Thank you.
in the show notes. So thank you so much. And to everyone else, have a great day ahead. You have been listening to the CXPod. See you next time.
That's all for this episode of the CXPod. A big thank you to our sponsor, Netigate, helping you collect and analyze all your customer feedback in real time. Go along and discover more at netigate.net.
Thank you for listening to the CXPod. If you want to reach us, you can always find us on LinkedIn, and please remember to follow us on Spotify and leave a review of what you think.